The studio lights were set to a warm hue that evening. Not too harsh, not too soft, just enough to bring out the richness of human expressions. The network executives knew something special was about to happen. The show was billed as the conversation we didn't know we needed. No script, no rehearsed questions, just two figures, two worlds. One, a fierce, no-nonsense legal mind whose words once shook courtrooms across America. Judge Judy Sheindlin. The other, a rising global figure whose humility and quiet strength had begun to whisper into the ears of millions. President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. When Judy arrived at the studio, she walked with her usual firm pace, clipboard in hand, glasses perfectly perched. People straightened their backs when she entered the room, even the producers. She didn't demand respect. She simply brought it with her. "This is either going to be a train wreck," she muttered under her breath, "or something worth remembering." Backstage, President Traoré sat quietly, hands folded, eyes closed. No aides, no entourage, just a man in a simple suit, as calm as a lake before sunrise. When the curtain opened and the host welcomed them both, the applause was thunderous, but brief. The moment Judge Judy and Traoré sat down, the air changed. The kind of stillness you feel when something real is about to happen. The host smiled. "We've brought together two people known for their truth, delivered very differently. Tonight, no debate, no courtroom, just understanding." Judy glanced toward Traoré, who gave a polite nod. His eyes didn't scan the crowd. They settled on her. Calm, present. Judy spoke first. "You and I come from very different worlds, Mr. President." Traoré smiled gently. "And yet, we sit in the same one now." The host chuckled nervously. "Judge, you've ruled over thousands of cases. President, you've ruled a nation. How do you both carry judgment?" Judy raised an eyebrow. "I don't carry judgment. I carry consequence." Traoré nodded slowly. "Then we may have more in common than I thought." The audience chuckled lightly, but Judy leaned in, her voice clear but gentler than usual. "I've seen people lie to my face, cry when caught, and rage when justice caught up to them. But I've also seen moments, rare ones, where someone admits their fault without shame. That's when something real happens. That's when people change." Traoré didn't respond immediately. His pause was not hesitation, it was intention. "In my country," he said, "people don't always get a second chance. Sometimes justice isn't a courtroom. It's a child going to bed hungry, a mother walking for hours just to find medicine, or a father selling his dignity to keep the light on." Judy blinked. She hadn't expected that. The host shifted in their seat, sensing something deeper taking shape. "President Traoré," Judy said, "you've been praised for your humility. But don't you ever get tired of carrying so much without complaining?" Traoré looked directly at her. "Strength," he said, "isn't how much you carry. It's how you carry it without letting it poison your soul." There was no applause, just a stunned, silent audience. The stage lights dimmed slightly, casting a quiet intimacy over the set. The host, sensing the energy, leaned back in their chair. The focus was no longer on television, it was on truth. Judge Judy looked away for a moment, collecting her thoughts. The audience, the cameras, the producers, they all faded for her. What was left was a memory, a wound quietly stitched over decades ago. There was a boy, she began softly, her voice different now, not the quick, sharp hammer of a courtroom, but a woman speaking through the veil of time. His name was Daniel. He stood before me in family court, 12 years old, accused of stealing medication for his little sister. Traoré's eyes didn't move. He was listening with more than just ears. I asked him why he didn't just ask for help, and he looked at me and said, "Help's for people who know who to ask." She paused. That broke me, more than I let anyone see. I still think about him. The crowd was utterly still. "Did you help him?" Traoré asked. Judy nodded slowly. I did what I could, referred him to a shelter, made sure his sister got treatment. But the system, it swallows kids like him. Traoré leaned forward, elbows resting gently on his knees. "In my country," he said, "our systems don't even have walls. No forms, no shelters, just each other. If a neighbor has food, you eat. If someone cries, you listen." He turned to her. "But the pain, it's the same, whether in New York or Ouagadougou." Judy looked down for a moment, then back up at him. "You're right. Pain is universal. So is hope. But we've trained ourselves to hide it." Traoré gave a gentle smile. "But what if we stopped hiding?" A hush spread across the room like a reverent mist. The audience, normally used to laugh tracks and applause signs, now simply sat in silence, listening. "You ever lose faith?" Judy asked. Traoré's smile faded, not out of shame, but out of memory. "There was a night," he began. "I held a young man in my arms. He had been injured in a protest. He looked up at me and whispered, 'Promise me my mother will eat tomorrow.' That was his last request. Not about himself, not for glory, just his mother." He swallowed hard. "I buried that boy the next day. But I've been feeding mothers ever since." Judy's eyes glistened, but she didn't wipe the tears. She let them stay. "You speak with the clarity of someone who doesn't just read speeches. You live them." "I try," he said. "Sometimes I fail, but I try." She reached across the table, her aged hand resting atop his. "You remind me of something I forgot," she whispered. Traoré tilted his head. "What's that?" "That justice isn't the sound of a gavel. It's the sound of being seen." The show wrapped. The cameras powered down. The producers, unusually quiet. Let the energy in the studio settle naturally.
Judge Judy and President Ibrahim Traoré remained seated, neither rushing to leave.
Something about that moment begged to stretch a little longer. Backstage, a young intern, fresh out of college, was standing with a trembling envelope in her hand. Her name was Eliza. She hadn't spoken to either of them all day, but she had watched from the shadows as truth blossomed between two giants, and it stirred something deep in her. Her hand shook as she approached the two.
Excuse me.
she said nervously, looking between them.
I know this isn't protocol, but I have something I think you both should see.
Judge Judy, still composed, gave a nod. Eliza handed over the envelope, addressed in neat cursive. To those who remember the forgotten. Judy opened it. It was a letter from a young girl in foster care.
Dear whoever reads this, my name is Jamie. I'm 14. I don't have a lot, just a notebook and a heart that hurts sometimes. I watched your show tonight. The judge lady made me think maybe grown-ups do care. The man with the calm voice made me believe I might matter. So, thank you. For not yelling. For not pretending. For being sad and strong at the same time. I wish people listened to kids more. I wish someone had looked me in the eye and said, "Your life is worth something." I think you both did that tonight, without even knowing me. Love, Jamie.
By the end, Traoré was quiet. Judy's lips trembled. Eliza spoke again. I just thought you should know. That wasn't a segment. That was a moment. Judy folded the letter with reverence and tucked it into her jacket. We can't change everything, she murmured. But we can change something. For someone. Traoré stood, his presence never imposing, but powerful in its grace. She's not alone anymore, he said gently. The next day, Judy called in a favor from an old colleague in child services. She didn't broadcast it. She didn't post about it. But Jamie's name was added to a list of priority reassignments, her case file reviewed with the care it had long been denied. Across the ocean, in Burkina Faso, Traoré sat with his team and requested a segment of his next national address be dedicated to youth in foster care around the world, not as charity, but as a reminder. Children who survive silence deserve to be heard louder than anyone else. Weeks passed. Clips of the show made the rounds online. Not for outrage, not for drama, but for peace. One clip in particular, Judge Judy placing her hand over Ibrahim Traoré's and saying, "Justice is the sound of being seen," was viewed over 50 million times in 6 days. People weren't just reacting, they were reflecting. In schools, teachers played the segment in class. In churches, pastors quoted it in sermons. In Senegal, a local village court adopted the phrase "justice begins with the ears" as a guiding principle. Judy was surprised by the response. She'd been on television for decades. People had laughed, clapped, debated, but they had never written poetry about her. One night, she sat alone with a small box on her lap. Fan letters, emails, drawings. There was one sketch she kept pulling back out. A crayon drawing from a 6-year-old boy titled, "The Judge Who Listens." Her gavel was drawn like a heart. Meanwhile, President Traoré returned to Ouagadougou to a quiet reception. Not the parade kind, but the kind where old women nod from behind market stalls and children wave shyly without knowing why. His cabinet was surprised by the reaction. It was just a show, they said. Traoré corrected them gently. No, it was just the truth. He instituted a new bi-monthly national broadcast, not for politics, but for voices. Stories from remote villages, letters from students, poems from prisoners. He called it The Other Side of Silence. It became the most watched program in West Africa within 3 months. One day, Judy flew in quietly to Burkina Faso. No press, no fanfare, just a private visit. Traoré greeted her at a rural community center where girls learned to read under a tin-roofed shelter. She looked around. Dirt floors, wooden benches, pure hope. "You built this?" she asked. "No," he smiled. "They did. I just listened." She sat among the girls, her presence a blend of stern warmth and tender awe. One girl named Fatima handed her a worn copy of a translated Judy courtroom transcript. "I like how you say baloney," the girl said, giggling. Judy laughed for real, full and unguarded. "I still say that even off camera." Traoré watched the moment quietly, then said, "We are who we are, on and off camera." And that was it. The internet loves spectacle. But sometimes, just sometimes, it embraces silence, truth, grace. And in this moment, between an American judge and an African president, something unusual happened. The world didn't just watch, it listened. Clips continued to spread, not with outrage captions, but with ones like, "The judge who remembered," "The president who didn't shout," "Justice without a courtroom." Think pieces were written in major publications. Universities included the dialogue and communication ethics syllabi. Late-night shows paused their usual bits just to acknowledge the phenomenon. One clip even played before a United Nations conference on global youth protection. The moderator began with a quiet sentence. "Tonight, we remember that leadership isn't loud. It's human." Back home, Jamie, the girl who wrote the letter, was transferred into a better foster home. She received counseling. She began painting. Her first canvas? A portrait of two people sitting across from one another, not arguing, not yelling, but listening. Underneath, in paintbrush cursive, she wrote, "You made me real." Months later, Judge Judy sat with Traoré again, not on television, but under a tree in Ouagadougou. They had tea, no press, just two people who knew what it meant to speak when it mattered, and to stay silent when it mattered more. "I used to think justice was something you delivered," she said. "And now?" Traoré asked. She smiled. "Now I think it's something you hold, carefully, like a heartbeat." He nodded. "And sometimes, when the world forgets to feel it, we remind them." A bird flew overhead. The sky opened with the gentle gold of sunset. And far away, across continents, thousands of lives were just a little softer, a little stronger, because one day, two people decided to stop performing and started listening.